let's move into our game review of the week. We are reviewing the Quacks of Quedlinburg. Quacks of Quedlinburg is a 1 to 4 player light to light medium game. Plays in 30 to 45 minutes, I think is safe. Mm-hmm. It is designed by Wolfgang Warsch, who made my favorite roll and write game called That's Pretty Clever. But he also made a game that our group loves and has played a bunch called The Mind.
Did he?
Yeah, Paul did not know that. Wolfgang Warsch does. Tell us about The Mind, Paul.
The Mind is basically an exercise in telepathy.
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
And so you basically sit with your people, and you get a number of cards depending on which round you're in.
Yep.
And it's either between 1 and 100. And basically, you need to put the cards down in sequential order. But you can't communicate. You just have to kind of look at each other.
You have to make up a form of communication that you are not sure if breaks the rules of the game.
It's literally telepathy.
So there's sort of the speed at which you put the card down on the table is a form of communication. The if you're sitting forward or back, if you're crossing your arms, there is definitely ways of communicating, and it's up to your group to sort of decide what you feel is fair.
Yeah, exactly. And so I really like that game because it forces you to really see each other. You're to really get into rhythm.
No, there's a lot of direct eye contact involved in The Mind. And if you are made uncomfortable by direct eye contact, and this is not necessarily a game I'd want to play with strangers, as direct eye contact with strangers might not be my wheelhouse, but direct eye contact with close friends of mine, and we both just start giggling uncontrollably the minute we stare deep into each other's eyes, is a good time.
Yeah, and so what's really interesting is it seems impossible at first, but soon you get into your rhythm, and then in the middle of the rounds, there were 12 rounds or some number of rounds, but around round 6, someone puts in a little too fast. They go, "Why did you do that? You knew I had." It goes, "I don't know, Jack."
So The Mind is a little bit of a game of probabilities, which very much is Quacks. Quacks is a game of probabilities and statistics and pushing your luck. Let me read you the theme of Quacks, or the what is it about. So in Quacks of Quedlinburg, players are charlatans or quack doctors. That's where the phrase quack is coming from. Each making their own secret brew by adding ingredients one at a time. Take care with what you add, though, for a pinch too much of this or that will spoil the whole mixture. Each player has their own bag of ingredient chips. During each round, they simultaneously draw chips and add them to the pot. The higher the face value of the drawn chip, the further it is placed in the swirling pattern. Push your luck as far as you can, but if you add too many cherry bombs, your pot explodes. So yeah, you are... I don't know. When I was playing the game, I sort of assumed it's alchemists. You're making a potion in a big pot. Everybody has a giant cauldron player board with a bubbling mixture inside of it that creates a swirling path in the middle of it. So at the beginning of the game, you place your little mixture droplet in the middle of it, and your goal is to place chips as far out as you can each round and score points. But at the beginning of the game, you start with 7 chips, 7 chips in your bag that you don't want to see, and only 2 that you do. But so let's say so how it works is at the beginning of the game, you have 7 cherry bomb chips. They're white chips with numbers on them. There are 4 that say 1, 2 that say 2, 1 that say 3. As you're pulling them out of your bag, if you go over 7, your pot blows up.
Boom.
Boom. Now, you don't lose. You're not out of the game. You don't get nothing. You just get less than everybody else that round. And there are some serious consequences to having your pot blow up, but it is not game ending. Your pot will blow up. Your pot will blow up maybe half the rounds, maybe more, maybe all the rounds.
It's really up to you.
I don't think you could win if your pot blew up every round, but that'd be an interesting thing to try to achieve.
I will try to break that next time.
Yeah, I think you could. There is a version of that. So when you place a chip down, though, the number of it decides how far you place it down along your little swirling path. So if it says 4, you count 4 from whatever your last chip was, and that is how far you will move on the path. And the farther you get along, the more points that you can score, the more money you will get to buy more chips. Because yes, this is a chip buying kind of game. So it has a deck building feel to it.
A bag builder.
A bag building game like Orleans or Altiplano. So at the end of a round, everybody, so it's all simultaneous, which is nice. There's no turns. Everybody's reaching into their bag. So it's sort of a little multiplayer solitaire here. We're all playing our own little game, pulling chips out of a bag, placing them on the thing. Somebody goes, "Oh, I'm at 7." So if you're at 7, you're fine. But then you have to think about what's left in your bag. So you can never look in your bag, but you can always feel in your bag and see how many chips you have left. And you know exactly how many white chips are in your bag or not because you can see what you have on your board. Then you start doing probability math. So you go, well, There are 4 chips in my bag that are good and 2 that are bad. One of them is fine if I pull that bad one, but one of them will bust me. So I have a 1 out of 6 chance of this busting. That sounds fine. 1 out of 6 is good. Reach in the bag, pull it out, and you bust. Yeah, of course, you always pull the one you didn't want to pull. But that is the game. But part of it is looking around the table, seeing how far other people have gotten in their swirling path on the pot, and asking yourself if you need to beat them because you are behind in points, you're behind in this, you're behind in that, or asking yourself, can I survive busting this round? Because when you bust, 2 things happen. 1, whoever gets the farthest around on their swirling pot gets to roll a die at the end of the round. That die has only good things on it, ranging from points to new chits to rubies, which are a form of resource in the game. It's good to roll that die. Whoever gets the farthest along gets some good stuff out of that die. If there are ties, everybody who ties gets to roll that. So whoever gets the farthest gets that. But if you bust, it doesn't matter how far you got. You are not in the running to roll that die. So whoever gets the farthest on the swirling path without busting gets to roll the die. The other main consequence, this is the one that matters more, is usually every round you get to do 2 things. You score your points for how far you got on the path. So if you look at where your last chit was placed on the path, there is a victory point number. You get that many points. There is also a resource number on that final space, and that decides how much money you get to spend on new chits. If you bust, you get to do one or the other. You're either scoring points or buying chits. If you didn't bust, you get to do both. So at the beginning of the game, the victory points are pretty small because you're not moving very far up the track, so it's okay. But you really can never not buy chits until maybe the last round, because buying new chits is the way that you do better. Without new chits, your board state will never improve. You'll never get farther because the more money you have, the better chits you can buy. So at the beginning of the game, you can only afford maybe 1s or 2s. But towards the end of the game, you can start or maybe in the middle of the game, you start affording 4s. And every time you pull a 4, you're going to move way far down along that path. Now, here's what makes the game interesting, because if it was just numbers, it would be kind of a quick, boring game. Each chit has a power, a game-breaking rule, something awesome it does. And the game has 4 sets of all of these powers. So there's a huge amount of variability in the game. And you can play each different set, and each different set has different combinations. You're supposed to stick with the set, so each set is numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and every color of chit is supposed to stay within that set. But they say there's an advanced version where you can just mix and match and do whatever you want, although they admit that might not necessarily be a balanced game. Or none of them will. Usually they sort of all interact with each other in an interesting way, so they can't guarantee that'll happen. Paul, tell us, what is the experience like of playing Quacks?
I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. It reminds me of zombie dice, where you.
What's zombie dice that people don't know? So
zombie dice is like you have a bunch of dice, and you're rolling, you're trying to get points, and you get too many zombies, or one zombie, or you die, you blow.
Sort of like a little Yahtzee-ish, right?
Exactly. It's basically a push your luck kind of experience,
right?
And if you're a gambler like myself, you find that quite enjoyable or harrowing, depending on on the situation. And so I think the game is played best with, the advantage of the game is it's pretty light. It learned real quick. You have a bunch of guys play a little Yahtzee or whatever, and you push your luck and you see what you get. And I think that's really fun. I think if you wind up spending a lot of time trying to game it too much, just counting and just
because you could get into the math of it. There's definitely the correct pull usually, right, in terms of the risk reward value and how many points you're going to get. Go ahead. Yeah.
And so with that, I think you might lose a bit of the fun.
Yeah.
Because this is a fun forward game. It's not a skill forward game.
Right.
So I think that is, if you address it at that level, I think you'll have a good time.
Right.
I think if you wind up, I don't know, thinking I'm going to find a way to win, you might lose a little bit. I actually think the way to make the game slightly more fun, because I'm a gambler, is to put money on it.
Well, I can't recommend that.
I'm also not recommending that, but I'm just saying, there's little consequences for blowing up. You go, oh, okay, well this is all luck. But if you were to put some sort of stake on it, whether some skin of some sort, I think you'll find that it'll be a different experience.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I can definitely see the higher the stakes in this, the crazier it is to be pushing your luck and stuff. So for sure, I mean, if you want to, whoever wins gets to pick the next game, kind of a thing. It's always a good risk. So, but to me, what's fun about this is the deck building aspect, because during the shopping phase, which it's just like Dominion, if you ever played a deck builder, the chits you buy really will help sort of build your engine and decide sort of what your bag can do. And they will often combo with each other. For example, there's just a very simple one where the number on the chit that you place decides how many chits you pull from your bag right now, and you get to place one of those. So you can now, like, let's say I put a 4 down. I place that down, obviously 4 spaces after my last spot. Then I pull 4 more chits from my bag, and if I see one I like, I can place it.
Yeah, that's the OP one.
It's very strong. It's very powerful, but it makes you feel like you're not totally at the mercy of luck.
Sure.
That there is a bit of. There's also the black chits are a sort of an area control or majority control kind of thing, because if you have more black chits on your board than the people to your left and right, you get things like you get a free ruby. What do rubies do? At the end of the round, you can spend rubies to move your starting droplet 1 space forward. And you can do that for every pair of 2 rubies that you have. Now, that means that you will start farther along on your path every round. So it becomes easier to get farther along the path as the game goes on, because you're starting from a farther position. There is also a catch-up mechanism in the game.
It's actually the best part of the game, I think.
It is. Well, I think it's such I've never seen such an overt catch-up mechanism before. I mean, you look at who has the VP leaders. At the end of every round, you look at your points, and there are little rats drawn on the victory track board. And so I guess this is like, rat tails used in like a witch's brew kind of a thing. So you count the rat tails, like literally little rat tails that rats have that they're crawling around on the board. And you count how many rat tails there are in between the leader and you. And that is how many spaces you get to start ahead of your droplet that round, meaning that you will be starting farther along. So there's 2 things. This is one, just like, this is definitely a win more game. The better you're doing, the better you're going to do, because the more money you're going to have, the farther along, the more victory points you're going to get, all these things. But there's also definitely a way to play this game where you are not going to be trying to score points early on, and you're instead going to be going for other things. And hopefully that you will ramp up and have, be saving your money and buying big 4-cost chits instead of a bunch of 1s and things like that. So the people who in the earlier game can buy 2 every round can be moving farther along because they have more chits, right? But if the people who maybe be saving up and just getting the 4s could potentially by later in the game be moving farther around than everybody else if they're pulling well.
Well, Trey kind of gamed it like this last night or when we played, where he really tried to stay as far back in the beginning game so that he would be able to use that rat and get that little bump ahead. Mm-hmm. And so what he was able to do was like continually get chits and like move his droplet at the same time, because he had so low VP. He was able to keep on moving, get the bonus, the rat tail thing, which gave him more money than it would normally, because he had that extra help. And so he wound up getting a lot of good chits for having pretty crappy VP position. Mm-hmm. And then there was a point where he pivoted, and then he got it all. Yeah. And I thought that was a pretty astute way of playing.
Yeah, Trey won by a lot. Right?
6 points.
Right. Okay. So it looked like he was wildly in the lead, but then in sort of the end, you really were able to sneak up behind him, and he still won.
Yeah, but handily.
But it was closer than we thought in the final score. Do you think this is a game that the best player will win at every time?
No. I think.
Do you think this is a game where the best player will win more often?
I think as plays go to infinity, yes. But right. I feel like at any given moment, you're really, really, it comes to alignment with your higher power. Like if the gods of fortune,
god is stronger than somebody else.
That's right. If the gods of fortune
But do you think? I mean, obviously, luck is the most important element of this game. If you could just look in the bag and pick what you want. Oh, I guess that's the question. If you could just look in the bag and play open, is there strategy to the order in which you buy the chits, the chits you're buying conversely to what other people are buying? Is there an optimal strategy?
I think that would depend on the chits that we are playing with.
The set that you're playing
exactly.
with that time.
I feel like when we first played with Jesse and Dimitri, right? We got this card. Like, each beginning of each round, you get a little event. So like sometimes they'll say like pick a 4 chit and just put it in your bag, or remove a white chit or whatever. Like, but Jesse, like we picked the super OP one that I think where you be able to pick 4 and then move 4 and then pick.
Yeah, to take a Magic the Gathering term, you sort of tutor through your deck for what you want.
And Jesse goes like, I'm going to zag.
Yeah,
and
he lost.
and he lost. And so I think there are sets that are going to be, there's a right way to sequence it. There's an optimal sequence.
And so, yes, and I agree with that. But I think these sets were designed not about strategy, but around fun. I mean, a lot of the chits are just fun. When you place them, cool things happen. A lot of them at the end of the round, for every one you get things. So they're fun. Like when you're buying a chit and putting in your bag, you're excited to see it because when you place it, something cool happens.
Exactly. Like you pull a chit out, you're like, yes.
Yeah.
And that yes kind of experience is what I think the game is banking on.
Totally. And so there's times when you have a 50% chance of good and bad, but a lot of chits and some really good ones in there. And so that experience of reaching into your bag and being like 50% chance I blow up, 50% chance I win is fun.
Yeah. And the other way,
and it's fun in a little kid way. Like in a, it definitely taps into a giddiness that
sure.
That
Absolutely.
is not
giddy is a good word. I think for me, like, at least in this last game, what we did that was crazy that I thought was also fun, but in the negative way, was like, I only have 2 chits that will blow me up. I have 10 chits in here. Oh, whoops! I blew myself up. Like,
yeah,
the universe doesn't like me today.
There's a bad feeling. There's a bad feeling where the odds of you blowing up very early are very low, and it happens, and it can be a bit of a checkout moment, I think, unfortunately. Like, if you have 40 chits in your bag and 7 bad ones, and the first ones you pull are all the 7 bad ones, like, which is totally possible. Yep. Of course it's possible. It's just a bad feeling. It's just oh, well, I lost. And you probably did. You probably did lose.
Yep.
And there's nothing you did, and there's nothing you could have done. And so there can be a feeling of like, I lost. But you know what? Game will be over probably in about 15, 20 minutes at most. So, try to have some fun.
Exactly. Like as far as time investment for fun possibility, I think it's pretty high.
Yeah. This is not a heavy strategic game. This is not a game that most heavy Euro gamers probably will enjoy more than a few times. But I think it's a game most people will enjoy.
Yeah. Like I think if you have a pretty casual game group or an opening game, like we play on occasion, we'll start with a light game and this is definitely in that arena.
Do you think I think it might be a little long for a filler? Like it's a super filler in the sense that, to me, a filler is less than 30 minutes. I think this is more. I think this is a minimum of 30 minutes. I also think it's a max of an hour, but I think it could be somewhere between 30 minutes
maybe
and an hour.
It'll depend on the teach, right? Like, if you don't have to teach it and you just go straight in.
True.
Maybe
Teach is pretty fast. I could do this teach in 5 minutes, I think. I think I could get somebody who's never played this before playing it in 5 minutes.
Okay.
I mean, the thing is, I would just say, don't worry so much about memorizing what all the different chits do. Just when we get to the shopping phase, buy
the good ones.
Buy the good. Yeah, buy what other people are buying, or just buy what looks like fun.
That's right.
Because there's a little bit of information. Like there's 8 different things to buy on the board right now. What do I buy? But you're shopping. Just buy something shiny that looks fun.
Shiny. That's a great way of saying it.
Buy it shiny. So I like this game. I think this is a game that sort of like Tiny Towns that I could totally play with my wife. I could play with my in-laws, my parents. I think it's a game you could teach non-gamers, and I think there's that fun. Everyone around the table is excited and shouting, and oh, I blew up, or I think that's a nice experience, and it's push your luck in a way where a lot of push your luck games can be very simplistic. This has enough game, even if it's the facade of strategy and gamerness, there's enough in there for me where I feel like I'm doing something. I'm not just playing zombie dice.
Yeah, I love the facade. I love it. Like I too think this game is good. I don't know if it's a must buy, but if you like this type of game, I think this is. If you're game group or you like fun games, I think this is a fun game.
I would definitely recommend this in the same breath as Azul or Splendor. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely less strategy than those. It's more, but I think some people really like that. That take to push your luck, gambling, having fun. I mean, the theme is great. The art's beautiful. I think it's very colorful on the table. I think all the chits are fun. I think it's tactile. It's fun to reach into your bag and buy things. I think people always love a shopping phase in a game where you're buying more than you had last time, and I'm excited to put this in my bag and see what happens. I think that's super cool.
Yeah. Just judge it on its own merits. Don't.
I would recommend that if you're going to play Quacks of Quedlinburg, that right afterwards you play PAX Renaissance.
You must. It's actually a must now.
It's Quacks and PAX.
It's a.
But I will just say, never, ever, under any circumstances, PAX and then Quacks. That's just dangerous.
It's wrong.
Just
it's wrong.
don't do it.
You'll blow up.
Don't do it. Wolfgang Warsch, Quacks of Quedlinburg. Check it out if it sounds interesting to you. We can't give it our highest recommendations. I don't think it's going to be in my top 10 for the year, but I think it is a game that I will keep and play with people who don't necessarily play games. I think there'll be times we pull it out in our group. I think it has a place in our game group.